I had this idea to walk backwards every day for 40 days in a row here in July, August, and a little bit of September 2024. I used to walk backwards almost every single day since the pandemic for several years. And what's going to happen is every single day I'm going to record my thoughts and feelings that's going on for me in real time about the creative process or whatever else comes up for these 40 days. And you're going to hear, maybe 5 to 7 minutes per day of the best of recorded during that live walking backwards for about a quarter to a half of a mile per day. And it's in real time. So I'm really walking backwards as I'm talking with you outside. So enjoy the whole episode, and here we go. Today is the 21st of August 2024, making it day number 26. I started earlier today, partly to adjust for, how every day it's slightly different. It's like light starts a little earlier every day until either we mess with it because of daylight savings time or the equinox and the solstice change it up. So I wanted to adjust a little bit for that. I also wanted to be here a little earlier so I could see what it's like a little before the transition time, which brings up transitions. So I'm here just a few minutes earlier, about 10-15 minutes earlier, and the street lights are on. And my noticing is two people that have the ability to have very different realities regarding public and private life. So the person who is leaving on the street, he lives his private life in public. So there's little to no self-consciousness or secrets or a line between what he does in his bedroom and in public, because his bedroom is in public. So less self-consciousness, less privacy. The gentleman that was checking out at the hotel, he had the ability, he had the resource of having a private life while he slept, a private life while he prepared himself to go out into the world. And he also had all of his possessions with him at that moment on his back. So both men are waking up, preparing for the day, and both men have, at least in the immediate sense, all of their possessions with them. And that other part is the part that makes it distinctive. And that circumstance, and the lights just went out. And that circumstance is a huge circumstance in relationship to their character, the expression of their character. Be it introvert or extrovert or neat or tidy or messy or gregarious, all of that is overridden by the circumstances, not in terms of the baseline of what is, but in terms of the expression. Because the circumstance of not having a private life, the circumstances of living in public, the circumstances of having a hotel room and doing everything you do behind a closed door is huge in terms of circumstance and huge in terms of how you share, how you express yourself. Doesn't mean that people don't respond differently, because they do, but it's less about character traits, nuances, and more about a visceral reaction to live or die, kill or be killed. The tsunami's coming, and do you start screaming or do you start running? And the variations are pretty limited, and what you're going to do is what you're going to do, and the time is pretty scrunched, and the event is so big that we become one, in a sense, which is part of that phenomena that happens when everyone gets involved in a tragic situation. And living on the street is a pretty spectacular, huge, life-changing event. Even though it's a consistent event, it impacts a lot of your choices. It impacts of how you comport yourself and how you relate. Having a room to sleep in gives you another or different reality, and then having both of them side by side is just a huge contrast. And when creating narrative, when writing stories, when making things compelling, that's one of the universal components. There's a title called The Odd Couple. It was a movie, I'm pretty sure it was a play, and it's about a sloppy person and a neat person. Oh, it was also a TV show. And the madness, that crazy madness that ensues. And even though it's looked at in a different way, that's exactly what marriage is sometimes, where you have two people to live underneath one roof that sometimes sometimes have contrasting or opposite character traits, and now they have to live together and sort those out. And if we look at reality TV, we look at the show Friends, or we look at a bunch of other ensemble cast TV shows, they follow a similar guidepost. So in your narrative, look for sharp contrasts, as that will help to give your story shape and engagement and conflict. We can work in the world of the palace, of the White House, of the elite economically. And then right next door, I think of the little match girl. She lives in a world where there's sharp contrast. The story doesn't take place with a bunch of people that are so hungry they're starving and they're selling, things on the street, and they're sitting around a fire underneath a tunnel and a trash can, talking about the day. The story takes place as the little match girl is on the streets, of course at Christmas time, so it's cold, and inside it's warm and bright. Outside it's cold and dark. She has nothing, they have everything. Contrast. So if you told the same story and it took place in, Santa Monica, California on a balmy 4th of July weekend, wouldn't be the same. Wouldn't have the same resonance. Wouldn't bring home the same feelings because there's no contrast, or less contrast. And we're in the shadow of a beautiful full moon still. It's amazing how long this is the last day of the full moons. All phases of the moon have a 3-day cycle. That's funny. 3 days. 3 days for a full moon. I'm not organically a morning person, just so we all know. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but definitely not a morning person. And I do these because it's important. I do this because there's a special, unique energy to the morning. Different things are available at this early in the morning. Certain things are not present this early in the morning. And this is my transition to say, have a beautiful day. And I look forward to our time tomorrow. Good morning. Today is August 22nd, 2024, day 27. Today is a very unique day where it's half and half. It's half foggy, hazy, only can see maybe the Hollywood Hills, and then there's a cloud or fog bank. And today took some extra thought, awareness, consideration in order to keep going. The alarm went off, and in those moments it's almost part of like a preset to just want to go to a checkoff list. And what I mean by that is, this is what you're programmed to do. 6 o'clock, brush your teeth, check. Go for your backward walk, check. And then the whole life becomes a checkoff list. You get all these things done, but you're doing it in a very mechanical way. And doing things in a mechanical way has its merits. Like if you are going on a commercial airline and you're taking, 700 people across the Atlantic, it's a good idea to make sure that all the boxes have been checked. And so as I was getting up, I was grounding into the moment, feeling my feet on the floor, feeling the fabric of my t-shirt as I put it on. Just going into the sensory experience of what it was like to get ready to go out the door. And that's all I needed to focus on. That's it. Just focus on that. And, you could do it from a checkoff list point of view. So grounding into the moment from a sensory perspective and then taking the next step. And when working on a nature-based or an organic approach to a project, that will serve you. If you're doing something technical in the artistic creative world, then you can use the checkoff list to your advantage. You can use it like if you're going off on a shoot. You want to make sure that you have your battery and your backup battery. You want to make sure you have your batteries fully charged. You want to make sure you have all the gear you need. You want to make sure you have a full tank of gas. And everyone's different. So if that's something that helps you anchor and feel more secure within your creativity, go for it. Some people like to run through lists of baseline elements that they want to have in place for their projects. And it's not not for anyone to say what is best for you. I will always encourage people to go from an organic place if it's a non-technical demand. So we have 3 circles of attention. Maybe the most important circle of attention in this particular scene or piece of writing or is the first circle of attention. And the third circle of attention doesn't really come into play, and it doesn't have an influence. It doesn't have a bearing. Sometimes you can write a character that's very close to you and you don't need to give it a specific trait, physical trait that helps define it. A lot of times actors and some writers, they'll give it a trait. They'll give their characters a trait and make sure that all their characters have traits. And a trait would be like a physical trait, like a limp, a twitch. Any one of these traits, especially in comedy, can lead to humor and humorous circumstances. So again, comedy tends to be more technical than a regular drama, but you also don't want to lean on any one element so hard that it always has to be there in all of your projects. I love when we get nuance like this, because these nuances bring up certain things. I just said that, and it's true, you don't want to have to rely on any one thing, and you don't necessarily want it to always be there, because if it's always there, then it's never there. If something is always there, then it becomes a given, and then it's never there. We fail to notice it. If it's always there in some nuanced way, then it can also be a theme or a signature of a certain kind of artist or project. Like, for instance, to me, there's a very clear feeling that Wes Anderson has when he directs a film. There's a very clear feeling when I'm in a Quentin Tarantino film. It's very distinctive, but it's also in the realm of the director/director-writer, because they're building worlds, and those worlds are part of who they are, and they keep coming back to it over and over. And as a director, that can be fulfilling. It can be part of your career path. As an actor, it may not serve you as well. As a writer, it may or may not serve you as well. So this thing of if something's always there, it's never there, is the reason why things can become nose blind. And this is also why in narrative and in other forms of art, that when you create something and within that culture or within that world, it's expected behavior, it's normal behavior, it's been normalized, and it's something that we want our audience to embrace, then what we normally do in narrative is we give it a situation where there's a person that's in the world, experienced in the world, and then there's a younger or innocent or inexperienced person in that same world, and they look at it with questioning eyes like we, the audience, would. Because no one else in that world reacts in a particular way, in a non-norm way, the adaptation happens very quickly. So what's part of your original design that you are perhaps working with in a way that's not in alignment with the original design, and that could make your life better, easier, and more fulfilled? Love our time together. Mañana. August 23rd, 2024, day 28. As I got close to turning around, I turned the corner, and then I turn around. And essentially, I turned the corner to this smaller side street. There's this stop sign, and there's a line at that intersection. The whole intention with stop signs and yield signs and lines are to keep people safe, right? And I have this noticing that I will turn around after I cross the line. I don't think I've ever turned around before crossing the line. I'm like, that's so interesting. At this very deep unconscious level, I'm waiting for the threshold before I transition. Now, this happens all day, every day, countless ways. It's unbelievable. We even talk about, that's the threshold. That's my limit. That's as far as I can go. Well, there's also the threshold of literally, like back in the day, back in the 1800s, they used to talk about carrying your bride over the threshold on your matrimony night. Because whenever you cross a threshold, you go from one world to another world. In our daily lives, we call that the living room, the bedroom, the hall. You have to cross a threshold, and back in the day, that would be a door or a doorway that had 2x4s and bigger, heavier construction to support that passage. So we have these thresholds, and then we have the threshold of the house itself. You go from outside to inside. That's crossing over a threshold. Every time you go to a building, And every time we do this, just like the stop sign, just like the line in the street, which is artificial, which is straight, which is one line, linear, we move into another world, another environment, another weather, if you will, different weather, right, from inside to outside. And in that crossing over, we change. In that crossing over, we become a different person. And whenever you go from one place to another, you have that opportunity. You behave differently in your bedroom than you do in your living room. You behave differently in private than you do in public before you cross over that threshold. And all of those require that you cross over their threshold in order to be in that place. And all of those are going to be denoted with a line. And that line is us crossing the line. And as we cross the line, we become different people, or a different part of ourselves comes forward. So there's two things here that are operating that are really important for the creative artist that will in some ways change the game. A threshold, the line on the sidewalk or the street behind which the stop sign is, you have to stop. All of these are lines, and they're all man-made. In lines, there is no perfectly straight line in nature. It does not exist. In fact, that's one of the ways you can tell if there is a question, if something is natural or nature-based, is that it won't contain any straight lines. Modern or mid-century architecture is nothing but straight lines as a sharp contrast to nature. So yeah, crossing over lines. You've crossed the line, You've crossed the line. It's in our language. So just know that when you're dealing with this, you're dealing with a man-made situation. I've drawn the line in the sand, and that there's a character threshold being tested, being enhanced, being altered through this transition. So if I look at the archetypal energy of the feminine, be it water or earth, or water and earth together, those will always have meandering curved lines. So the curved lines of the coast, of a lake, a stream, all of that is the combination of water and earth coming together to create something in nature. Never is there a straight line. And then if you look at feminine movement in general, you'll also see curves and undulations and spirals and a softening. And then if you look at the masculine energy, or the archetypical masculine energy, you see straight lines. And what I associate with masculine energy would be, say, the military. And the military is all about straight lines. And the masculine energy is attuned to the fire energy and the air energy. But because fire and air is nature-based, it still won't have any straight lines. So we just did a deep dive on two things. One is your character from an energetic perspective, from an archetypical perspective, there's always nuance. Is your character more of a straight line or more of a curved line? Are they set and bound by rules and discipline, or are they more curved and soft and yielding? And the other one is as they cross the lines of their life, how much do they change or differentiate when they cross over the line, the threshold, into a new space that's been artificially created by drawing a line? And one of the things, as every parent knows, that until the child is domesticated to some degree, they will have no awareness, they will have no way of responding to the external man-made line. In other words, they won't act any differently if they're in the car with you or if they're in the bank with you. But there will be a differential when the atmosphere changes and they feel different, which is not based on crossing a threshold. They'll respond to that, which is the inner world or the natural world. So that brings up another layer of how domesticated, how much culture or indoctrination or sophistication is your character at that point. I just crossed over the line and this car came up to the line and it gave the stop sign and the line its homage, barely. It acknowledged it by slowing down, but it wasn't even close to a stop. It tells us about the character, right? Not about the car. Character behind the wheel. So yeah, looking for those tells, looking for those elements. And I'm really moving away from calling people in stories characters. I want to start calling them human beings, because character to me has a fixed sense. And the whole idea of at least transformational narrative is seeing the changes and being with the changes and applauding the change. Who are they now? Or one of the most primal questions, who am I? Who am I? And if I relate to my person in a narrative as a human being, I can ask in a different way. Like, who are they now? Who are they becoming? Have they expanded or have they contracted? Have they gone for a risk and failed? Or are they trying on new behavior? Or are they falling back into their old pattern? Are they taking risks? And if they are taking risks, what kind of risk is it? Is it a man-made risk where they're crossing over the line? Are they staying in their own self-imposed prison, if you will? So these are the things that we're going to be exploring whenever we create. Does this mean that when you're doing a 3 to 5 minute comedy sketch that you're going to do a deep dive like this? You could, maybe you won't. But what you might take away from this is this character more of a straight line or more of a curved line? More fun to come. I just crossed over a line. I also want to bring up this other part before we say au revoir, which is this whole thing around drawing lines, which is part of the military, which is how they take a city, right? They draw a line, or they draw a parameter or a perimeter. They draw a perimeter around something and they slowly take it over. Or if they're having a fight over a country, they will draw a line and say, this is mine, this is yours. Or if I'm in a fight with someone, I draw a very clear line between myself and the other. So it can be individual, it can be a community, it can be a whole country. It doesn't make a difference. As soon as we draw a line, we create a separation. As soon as we create a separation, we're going to create conflict. And that's really important for narrative. Good morning. It's the 24th of August, 2024, making it day 29. I was crossing that line, crossing the threshold, and I was very aware after rounding the corner and coming into position about making sure that I approached that area differently. And then as I approached the area differently, I saw how clearly there was an unconscious thing to turn after I crossed this line where they put the stop sign. There's that line that you have to stop behind. That was such a strong presence and very much a determining factor as to where I turned around. So thank you very much for helping me to see this. So I went to a slightly different area where there's a slightly different angle, and I even went so far as to go to an extreme side of the line, so I didn't actually cross the line. It was this line stopped before the street stopped, so I went around the line just to show that line that I know what's going on, just to bring more awareness. This awareness practice that we're playing together is literally an endless game. I can see where every day I can go deeper and deeper and deeper, both things that are known and unknown, and the ripple effect of those known and unknowns. So I'm noticing I'm having like a little nausea right now, which is unusual, but it's also unusual that I sleep so few hours before doing this. It's been challenging to go to bed before midnight and get all the things I'm doing in this creative cycle done. So that may add to it, but it is unusual. So I'm noticing that this morning about how I feel. What I'm noticing right now is the amount of red that's all around me as an accent, but it's really used a lot as a warning. Like there's whole sections of this area here where the curb is painted red, meaning do not park, do not stop, do not think about stopping. Like you'll get a ticket, you'll get towed away. Then there's the no parking signs above the red, no parking anytime. And then since I walk in this area that has a cul-de-sac, at the end of the cul-de-sac that says end, that's yellow, which is a caution. But the two signs underneath it are red, and it's just triangles of red. And then they didn't want anyone parking in this area that had meters, so they put red hoodies on the parking meters. And it almost looks like Christmas, where it says no parking. flashing over the meters. And of course, stop signs have a background of red and a hexagon. And then there's these red cones, which indicate there's some sort of construction or something to be wary of. It's a lot of red. And the red pops because of all the green. All of the nature is green. The green grass, the green trees. And they try to keep everything green by keeping a green chain link fence so it looks more in alignment. So the chain link fence is painted green, the hedge is green, the trees is green, because we're getting closer to fall, and there are eucalyptus trees. There's the brown gray, but all of that, all this nature color, at least what's here on this street, has no red. So we as human beings use red as our way to say caution. That's the most bizarre thing that just happened as well. So the spatial relationship is a very powerful relationship. The spatial awareness between the red and the green is what's creating that contrast. So there's so much space of green that when red appears, it really pops because of the spatial relationship. But the spatial relationship between two people from a creative perspective, from a relational perspective, is huge. Like, for instance, so today is 25th of August, 2024, and it's day 30, 3/4 of the way into our cycle. So we have cycles, 30-day, 40-day cycle. I always think of washing machines because these have cycles, and they have factory presets. You can extend and you can alter them to some degree, but it's relatively fixed. Fixed meaning set. So you have those kinds of cycles. Then you have the cycle of summer, autumn, winter, spring, and that also is a cycle, but the sequence is set, but the duration has unlimited amount of variability because it's an open system. So we have these cycles that play out, and if it's man-made, closed system, artificial, it's going to have a very set amount of time. So the cycle man creates is that it's set, like a straight line. 30 minutes for the wash cycle, 20 minutes for the rinse cycle. The dry cycle is, 30 minutes, whatever it is. When it comes to spring and summer and fall, we have the equinoxes and the solstices, and those are within a very small range. They do alter every year slightly, but they're within a 2 to 3 day window most of the time. So there's some mutability, but within that, let's say we're in Los Angeles, the equinox, the fall equinox in the northern hemisphere happens on September 21st, as it does, plus or minus. It's not to say that we don't have some temperatures that are in the 90s Fahrenheit or the hundreds at the end of February or early October, which would be, akin to summer temperatures, because it's not set in stone. It's not fixed. It's an open system, and you're going to have those gradations with a washer dryer or with a dishwasher set. It's set. Yeah, sure. You can change the settings, to some degree, but it's set. So I'm just in my area where I shift back to forward walking, and there's this line. My whole body wanted to turn because I crossed the line. Wow, that was powerful. And I felt that urge come up. Thank you.